All right, welcome. This is going to be the next video in module 1. This is going to be video number 2. There should be another, I would say, 2 more videos for this section. We're moving on to chapter 2 in the book. We're now starting to work about file management. And this is going to talk about the Linux file system first. So in the very beginning, we're going to talk about the file system as a whole. Some of the things you should go ahead and know is that once you get done with this, you should be able to go ahead and manage files and directories. We're going to start diving into using some of the shell so we can get a better idea of that. We're going to learn how to re-execute previous commands using the history command. We're also going to identify regular expressions and how to use them with commands like find, grep, and if we have time, we'll go into sed. And we're going to talk about some file compression. Okay, so let's get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to start talking about the file system as a whole. And actually, I'm going to move my head right there. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and talk about this. So many of y'all know that the Windows file system already pretty good. The Windows file system is basically, you have a C drive or a D drive, and within there you have your things such as the users folder, you have your program files, and your data, and then any other thing that gets actually stored here. This is where all this stuff happens and where things go, and then anything that's pertaining to specific users gets sorted into the users folder, and da-da-da-da. Okay? Well, the Linux actual file system is a bit different than the Windows one. And we'll start seeing the difference in just a second. But like a good graphic is actually one in your book. This is actually the visual representation of actually how things are broken out. So when we talk about this, in Linux, everything, I mean everything, including the processes that you're running, is a file. So you can find a file in everything. So when we look at this, you can see right here at the very, very top, there's this /. Well, we call this the root directory. This is where everything resides. Everything resides in root. And so that symbol of the / is very important because that symbol tells us like starting point. This is root directory. Then from there, you can have things such as the boot folder, or the bin folder, the etc folder, the home and the user folder. And under the home folder, there may be subdirectories such as Julia and Sarah for the different types of users. So these are the very important pieces of the file system as a whole. And we can see that a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the terminal. So I'm going to come over here. This is Ubuntu, and you're going to go ahead and actually get experience with this, and you'll learn how to use Ubuntu in this beginning portion. And then we'll switch over to the CentOS side. So we're going to open up the terminal. I'm going to click right here on this little 3x3. I'm going to open up the terminal. This is the command line interface. This is the command line interface that is very similar to what y'all are used to with the Windows, which is going to be the DOS or the CMD. I need to... let's see. All right. Nope. So some of the cool things about this, there we go, that's what I wanted. There we go. Okay, cool. So one of the cool things about this is that we can actually go and look at this. So the first way we're going to do this is we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the commands. But we'll talk about that in just in the next video. But what I want to go ahead and talk about is the directory itself. So we'll see them in the actual file system in a little bit. But let's just talk about some of the more common ones. So I'm going to highlight some of the more common ones that you should know as a user, and then someone is going into may have to use a Linux operating system such as Ubuntu or CentOS. These may vary a little bit, but for the most part, most of them are going to be the same in most of the distributions out there of Linux. So again, we talked about the top directory. That's gonna be the root. This one right here is gonna be, I'm gonna highlight the ones that you should know that will be a little more important. So the / bin, this is actually contains what's called bin, actually is short for binaries. And these are critical binaries. And these binaries are executables. So they get executed. And so these are needed binaries for the operating system or maybe for the kernel, okay? Then you also have the / boot. These are the files related to booting the system. So these are what whenever you start your computer up or you start the virtual machine, this gets referenced in the file table to go ahead and actually start initiating what do I need to start up for this operating system to get to the login screen. Okay. Then you have the /etc. We will spend a lot of time in /etc in this course because it actually stores all the configuration files for the system. So there's gonna be a lot of editing and changes. The /home is very much similar to the /users or the users directory in Windows. This has the home directory, has all the different users. The lib is going to be the library directory. Okay, these are system libraries that are needed or important. Then you have the /media mount. These are for like removable USBs, stuff like that, or if you're adding extra hard drives. Then you also have the /opt, which is for optional software package. I'm not going to go into that in detail. But however, then you have /proc. This actually proc actually stands for process or processes. So this contains data about the processes that are currently running on the system. But it's not just any type of data, it's kernel data, such as virtual file system, disk-based file system. Now, so in the Windows world, we have a user, and then we have what's called an administrator. In the Linux world, we have what's called a super user. We have a user, then we have a super user. So what this actually super user is called, this user is referred to as root. So if I have root permissions, I have the keys to the kingdom. If I don't have root permissions, I'm a user, or in some cases, I'm a guest. Okay. So the root directory, the root user, has a directory called /root as well. This is that root directory. This is a root users directory. And this is where all the information from the new user is stored. It's not stored in /home. So it's going to be really important about. Then you also have the /temp. These are going to be very important if you're going to cybersecurity because things like to be stored in temp. /user. This has subdirectories. Again, these are binaries, executables, libraries, documentation. And then you have these broken down to user bin, lib, user lib, and user sbin, and user sbin. So these are non-essential binaries. And then these are libraries for the executables in the user bin. Okay, so they kind of map to each other. Then you have user shares, that's data that's architect and that is architecture independent. So we'll talk about the different types of architecture. /var is going to be very important. In /var, this is where all the logging happens, mostly for your system. And so you have things like var mail, var log, var temp. So as a whole, already you can see that the Windows operating system is a little bit different, and I use that term loosely, than the Linux operating system. Again, like I said, I'm going to reiterate this. Everything's a file in this actual operating system. So you can find a file on everything, which is very helpful in most cases. So you don't have to go in and actually, you're going to find out that the reason why in this course you're going to use nothing but the command lines because most people that use Linux don't use the GUI unless they have to. All the things that you can do in the command line, and it can be even more robust. So if you can actually get some really good masterful skills in using the command line, not only does it translate into the Windows world, but also this is going to be very helpful both for job applications or for future classes, or in general. Like this is just to go ahead and getting used to not relying on a GUI to do something, which is very helpful because, for example, if you're going into networking, the Cisco IOSs don't have a GUI. They do now if you're doing software-defined networking, but if you're not, and you're doing regular like setup for a switch or a router or a firewall, they don't have a GUI. So you have to go ahead and actually use command line. Right. So that's what I'm going to talk about with the file system. The next video, we're going to start diving into the actual command line itself and figure out how we can go ahead and get it to start running our actual commands. There's going to be some, after you get done with these next two videos, there's going to be some walkthroughs to go ahead and actually get you more comfortable with running these commands. And then also, along with that, there's going to go ahead and not only be an actual walkthrough, but also going to be a couple of checks to make sure that you're understanding. So remember, this first module is 2 weeks long. So I want you to go ahead and get very familiar with being able to do these things. And we're just going to build on these skills as we go through the course, okay? So you need to go ahead and get very comfortable with that. That being said, I'll see you on the next video.